Hello, everyone. This is Rose. Today's topic from the Book of Life is: it is said we marry a person family when we marry the person. Why do we? Should this rule only apply to a person who has a minor child? Let's take a look at this short story from the Book of Life. Karen and Joe were dating for 3 years when Joe asked her to marry him. Karen did not have any kids of her own. However, Karen was fully aware that Joe was a male whore when she met him. He had 8 kids and 6 baby mamas and was tiptoeing in and out of well-known professional women beds in the dark. We all know what you do in the dark comes out in the light. The women that were sexing with Joe wanted to remain anonymous because of their profession. They did not care about the other women Joe was seeing in addition to them. He was their boy toy. It was not about relationship. It was all about joy. They all liked what he did with his tongue. He was not marriage material in their eyes. When Karen met Joe, she had just moved to town because of her new job as an attorney. The radio station where Joe works is down the street from the law office where Karen works. They met by accidentally bumping into each other in passing at a diner near their jobs. One makes you question, was it really an accident, or is that how Joe meets his new women? Joe took one look after bumping into Karen. He took one look at her big butt and instantly turned on the southern charm he used to catch all the other professional women in his life. She was mesmerized by Joe's charm and his dreamy eyes. He spoke in his sensuous tone with her. They sat at the same table for lunch. That was one heck of a bump. After their lunch hour was up, they exchanged contact information. The two began to date shortly after meeting each other. Because Karen found herself falling fast for Joe, she did a background check on him. His professional credentials checked out okay. He did not have any criminal history. She did see that he had been before a judge on several occasions due to back child support that he owed each of his children's moms. In the background check, several women were listed as possible relatives or associates. Karen discovered as she investigated further many of the women that Joe lived with. He lived with them, and many of them for a very short period of time. She didn't understand. Why was he living with different women for a short period of time? This is why his name was connected to their addresses. It appeared that Joe was moving from one woman home to another woman home every 6 months or so. There was a few that he stayed with for over a year. Karen was initially puzzled, but she began to rationalize it in her mind, like a lot of us do when we like somebody. She began to put 2 and 2 together. She realized he was financially stricken with child support and trying to keep his newly open bar afloat. So in her mind, well, okay, he has a lot of kids, a lot of child support, and he recently opened up a bar. So maybe he was living with these women to save his money. Karen convinced herself all was good. Joe knew that Karen was a different kind of woman. He felt she was his opportunity to start fresh with someone who did not know his past, so he thinks. He was ready to settle down with one woman, and as an attorney, Karen understands that everyone has done something in their past that they are not proud of and would like to keep it private. Therefore, she decided to keep what she found out about Joe's past to herself until he proposed to her. After saying yes to marrying Joe, Karen decided to come clean with Joe, letting him know that she was fully aware of his past. She informed Joe that according to her upbringing, he would need to meet with her immediate family and confess his past sins to them, as well as give an account to them as to how he has changed and what he is doing to never return to his sinful ways. Joe is having an issue. He was definitely having an issue with Karen's request to talk with her family about what she labels as his past sins. After all, they both are in their 40s. Joe tried to reason with Karen by saying, "Why do I need to confess what you classify as past sins, my past sins, to your family? My kids were not conceived out of sin. They were conceived out of love. Besides, I am marrying you, not your family." Joe was no match for the fast-talking attorney. By the time she was finished with him, he found himself at church pleading with the pastor of the church to forgive him for his sins. The pastor told Joe, "I think you are looking for the church down the street. The one with the big bell on top that rings every Sunday at noon?" He says, "We do not have a confession booth here. According to our doctrine, God is the only one you need to confess your sins to and ask for forgiveness." He tells Joe, "Now, if you want me to talk to you, to pray with you, you want me to pray with you and for you to help you gain some control over easily giving in to sins, I can do that. I'm here for that." After talking to the pastor about his dilemma with his fiancée, the pastor agreed to counsel with them both. He offered Joe a solution. He said, "Well, you tell me she's a church-going woman, and you are on a 10 here. So if she's here newly out of town, I can counsel with you both." So Karen agreed. After Joe went to Karen, told her about his conversation with his pastor, Karen agreed to counsel with Joe's pastor only because the doctrine of his church was very similar to the doctrine of her hometown church she attended with her family as a child. Although counseling was going well, the pastor nor Joe could persuade Karen to change her mind on Joe having to confess his sins to her family. It wasn't happening. They was not going to change her mind. Karen was dead set on, you need to talk to my family. Karen's parents and brother flew in town to meet Joe. After dinner, everyone went to Karen's and Joe's home. Yes, you heard me correctly. Joe and Karen were living together. Karen's mother begins to speak on how important it is for their family doctrine to be passed down from one generation to the other. And although Joe was confused, he answered each one's question about his so-called past sins. Also, he gave an explanation and how he has changed from his sinful ways. Each of the family members express their concerns. They express their concerns about his sinful ways. But due to his sincere promise, they was concerned, but Joe was very sincere in his promise to the family to change from his sinful ways because of his love for Karen. He put the charm on them. He really did. And it was helpful. Before going back to their hotel room, each family member gave their individual words of encouragement to Joe. Because of Karen, they let him know that he has a commitment to each of them as well, and that they will not tolerate any disorder conduct, especially extramarital affairs. So they let him know. They individually spoke with him on what they thought about his sinful ways and how they felt on what he said, and they felt he was sincere in his commitment to change his life. But they also left him with a little note letting him know that you are committed to each one of us because of Karen, and that not any of us would tolerate any disorder in your conduct especially pertaining to extramarital affairs. Joe, let me tell you, Joe was scared straight after Karen's 6 feet 7 inches, 285 pounds of lean muscle father and brother finished speaking. See, Joe was a short man. He was only 5'10". And he was a medium-sized man. Joe was small. So you going up against a father and son who look like twins in their body shape and figure, height. They both tall, almost 7 feet, almost 300 pounds of lean muscle. Joe was scared straight. He agreed to their principles. In between the time, but here's the thing, although he agreed to their principles, in between the time Joe and Karen got engaged to the time they were married, Joe stepped out on Karen at the beginning of their relationship before he met her family. He stepped out on her. He had sex with 2 of his ex-girlfriends. Joe knew he had to tell Karen. The only reason why he knew he had to tell Karen, because one of the exes was pregnant. There was a baby on his way. Joe was scared, but he decided to break the news in a counseling section with the pastor. So Karen was heartbroken. Her and Joe broke up for 3 months after he confessed with the pastor. They broke up. Joe tried to explain to her, this was in the beginning of us meeting, before I met your parents, before I committed to you, before I asked you to marry me. He tried to explain that, but Karen wasn't hearing it because she was hurt. So it took her 3 months to get over the hurt. Karen began to miss Joe after 3 months. She went to him and she made him swear that he would not cheat on her again. He agreed. 4 months after returning home, Joe and Karen got married. So, he returned home, and then they planned the wedding. 4 months after he returned home, it was time for the wedding. Now, this is the weird thing. Karen tells Joe that he has to inform her family of his sins since a baby was involved. When Joe refused to talk, but the thing about when she told him, it was after the wedding that he had to confess his sins to her family, because Karen had the wedding and she did not invite her family to come into town to the wedding. Why not, Karen? Why not? You kept the secret from your family until after the wedding, and now you scared to tell your family. You wait until after y'all get married, Joe thinking, okay, y'all have worked it out. It's, you're not going to tell the family. And then after you guys get married, you tell him he got to confess his sins to your family because there's a baby involved. So, like stated, when Joe refused to talk to her family, she became irate and began to yell at him. She tells him, you broke your commitment to my mother, my father, and my brother, and you are going to hold yourself accountable to them by confessing your sins. You told my mother, you told my family that you would never, ever do anything to hurt me, especially extramarital affairs. So Joe was like, but I did this before we got married, before I proposed to you. This is old news, So Joe asked Karen, anyway, why do I need to confess to your family as your husband? We are married. You and I have worked through this. It would never happen again. So why do I need to talk to your family? Karen tells Joe, because I don't want them to ride up on you after they read about it on social media. Joe did not agree and tried his best to avoid having to discuss it. He just didn't want to talk about it no more with Karen. He was tired of arguing about it. He thought he was home free. You didn't even invite them to the wedding. We went and got married after we made up from this happening. You understand when it happened and how it happened, and we are doing okay. But now, because social media is picking up our wedding and stuff is starting to come out of the woodworks, now you want me to talk to your family. But prior to our wedding, before social media start putting it on out there, and you scared it's going to pop up about the child, so now I got to talk to your family. And he's like, you should talk to your family. And they're arguing. And Joe is like, no, I don't want to talk to your family at this point. I don't need you talk to your family. She's like, no, you're going to talk to my family because you made the commitment to my family. You're going to let them know. They're going to hear it from you and not from me. Oh my God, it was on. During the course of them arguing about Joe talking to her family, Joe found out that his mother became ill. He begins to spend time with his mother. Talking to Karen's family was not the least of his worries. It was not on his mind at this point. But Karen appeared to not have compassion for what Joe was going through. Karen was so fearful of her family finding out through social media, she totally downplayed and ignored the fact that Joe's mother was dealing with a serious illness and he was by his mother's side. She became irate again, yelling at Joe as she tells him that he was using his mother's sickness as an excuse to not talk to her family. Karen secretly flies her mother and brother in town. Her father couldn't come. Thank goodness. He didn't need two Incredible Hulks standing before him at a time when he's trying to help his mother. So she flies her mother and brother in town. She tells Joe that her mother and brother is in town, after they get there. She secretly flies them in. She don't tell Joe until the day that she wants Joe to meet them at the restaurant. She tells Joe that if they meet at the restaurant and he talks to them at the restaurant, it should go pretty smoothly because they'll be out in public. But Joe says he will meet them, but then he later, while they at the restaurant, texts Karen saying that he couldn't make it because he was with his mother and that he had to take her back to the hospital. He had to, take her back because she was having a relapse. Because Karen's mother and brother were scheduled to fly back home the next morning, she only flew them in for a one-day thing to talk with Joe, and they were scheduled to fly back that next morning. She, instead of taking them to their hotel after dinner, she brings them to her home to wait on Joe. She was determined Joe was going to talk to her family that day. So shortly after arriving home, she, her and her family is sitting on the couch. She pouring them a drink and talking to them, and she hears some noise. And she realized Joe was hiding in their bedroom with the door closed. So Karen was like, I didn't see his car. What did he do? Park down the street? He's in the bedroom hiding. Karen goes in the bedroom, makes Joe come out the bedroom to talk with her family. Joe had no other choice. So Joe, he sits down with her family. He basically confirmed what Karen had told them at dinner, because she went on to express to her family at dinner why they was there, why she invited them back in to talk with Joe. So Joe goes and he, confirmed what Karen had told them at dinner about his so-called sins. He expressed how sorry he was and that nothing like this would ever happen again. He explained that what happened was when him and Karen was on a break before they got married. He lied, but Karen went along with it. The mother expressed her disappointment in Joe. Oh, she let him have it in the way that Christian mothers can let you have it. She let him have it. She let him know this type of behavior was not tolerated in their family, and she hoped he put forth actions in place to never let this type of shame come upon their family ever again. Karen kept apologizing to her mother for Joe's action. Karen looked like a scared little girl who had disappointed her mother beyond repair as she kept apologizing. Karen's brother sat quiet, didn't say too much as Karen's mother spoke, and Karen apologizing to, her mother. Then it was his turn to speak. Karen's brother straight up tells Joe, if something like this happens again, I will come back in town to get my sister and handle the situation. Wow. Then he asked Joe, do you understand? At this moment, Joe begins to look like a little boy whose parents has just spanked his butt for misbehaving in church. Joe nods his head as he says, yes, I understand. It's obvious that Joe loves his wife, Karen, beyond words, in order to accept her family's personal doctrine as his own, especially when their personal doctrine appears to be one-sided. It has to be one-sided. You know your grown 40-plus daughter is living with him before they got married. But you want to come and scare him straight about something that happened in his past before he met your daughter? And then, of course, there's that incident that happened after he met her before he proposed to her. But nonetheless, this is how Karen and her family gets down. This is their personal family doctrine. The weird thing about Karen's family personal doctrine as churchgoers, it contradicts the Word of God. Because in Genesis chapter 2, verses 23 to 24, after God created a helpmeet for Adam, Adam says, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore, a man shall leave his wife and his mother. A man shall leave his father. Forgive me. There's a lot of men leaving wives, but in the word, it don't say that. In the word of God, it says that a man shall leave his father and his mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Also in Ephesians chapter 5, it's written that wives are to submit themselves unto their own husband, and husbands are to love their wives as Christ also loved the church. In verse 31 of chapter 5 in Ephesians, it says, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. One flesh. So when a husband and when a woman and a man get married, they become a family. They become one. And it's, they shouldn't have to answer to each other family concerning their personal business life as a husband and wife. It's understand. I can understand support, family supporting you after you get married when you having an issue and encouraging you by way of the word to be strong and to work things out and, support whatever decision a married couple decide to make. If they decide to go their separate way because they can't seem to they keep the marriage together for whatever reason, that drug makes it fall apart. But it's up to those two individuals to make the decision about their marriage. And no one else can make a decision as to should they stay together or should they not be together. They can support but it's ultimately up to the two individuals. But in the case of this marriage, in the case of Karen and Joe, it appears to be that Joe has become one flesh with Karen, her mother, her father, and her brother. He married all of them. They are all one flesh in together. He became one flesh with all of them. He married all of them. I cannot argue against how they choose to live their lives as a married couple. However, personally, I do not think parents and siblings should be disinvolved in the marriage of their family member. They shouldn't. Because we all see dysfunction in relationships, especially in marriages. We see it. And we don't understand the dysfunction, especially when you see one member being greatly psychologically, mentally abused, and sometimes, unfortunately, physically abused, and then they choose to stay. On the outside looking in, we don't understand it. But at the same time, they are one flesh, and if that member chooses to stay, regardless of the support that she has from her family members or her friends, or he has from his family members or his friends, to help them through separating because the relationship is so toxic, and they choose to stay, then there's nothing that the outsiders can do but get out of it and pray for them. That's it. Because their mindsets is, is beyond us that's on the outside looking in. Our mindset. So the only thing we can do at this point is pray for them and support whatever decision they want to do, whether to stay or whether to leave. We just can be a support system and a support system only. So it's one thing to support a married family member through a difficult time in the marriage versus totally controlling the principles of their marriage. It's one thing to support it. It's another thing to totally control the principles of their marriage. It's hard. It is very hard. Sometimes we want to jump in it, and sometimes family members jump in it, and they find themselves at the hands of the law in jail somewhere because they seeing a family member being abused, and they in jail, and the family member goes back to the abuser. It's hard. It is very difficult and very hard. That's why we have to get out of it. We have to pray about the situation, and we have to offer support based on their decisions. And that's all we can do. And it's sad, but that's it. They are one flesh. To each his own. That's what I say. To each his own. Sometimes you gotta turn away from it in order not to see it. You have to say, look, come to me when you're ready to make a change in your life. Don't come to me and talk to me about your marriage if you're not ready to make a change in your life. You're not ready to make a change. You want to stay there into that toxic relationship. If that's what you want to do, stay. But don't come talk to me about it. Because unless you come and you say, don't give me the details, just come to me and say, pray for me. Just pray for me. I'm having problems in my marriage. Don't give me the details. Just say, pray for me. Because if you're not ready to make a change, don't come tell me, because you're putting that on me. You're putting that toxicity on my spirit now. I'm being weighed heavy with what you're going through, and you're not ready to change. So what can I do for you? And then I'm going to seem like I'm not a good family member, or I'm not a good friend, because I'm not there the way you want me to be there, but I can't because you're weighing me down. But in the case of Joe and Karen, it was about their past, his past. Come on now. Parents, family, get out of it. This is something before he met your daughter. Let them be together as one flesh. Quit inflicting your personal doctrine and principles in their marriage, and they're over 40. Come on, Karen. What's going on? What's really going on with you? Maybe you need to go into counseling to be over 40, and you allowing your family to control your marriage. Well, like I said, to each his own. We live and we learn. What do you think? What do you all think? Food for thought. Do we marry a person, family, when we marry the person? Do we? Leave a comment. Yes or no. Just simply leave yes or no. What do you think? Be blessed. Be safe, people. Peace. Have a good day. Remember to click that thumbs up and the subscribe button.